What's up, everybody? It's the Benchwarmers, and today we are doing our second rendition of the NBA 2021 mock draft. So this is our perspective on what we think based on the draft order and the draft prospects each team should take. Obviously, it won't be exactly how it's going to be in the real draft, but instead of what we did the first time where we only did the lottery teams, this time we are doing all 30 teams, or at least all 30 picks of the first round. So we'll see much more players, a wide variety of players, who's moving up, who's moving down over the past week and a half. Thank you so much for your support on our last mock draft video. Hopefully we can get some similar numbers on this and like and subscribe. So with that, let's go to the first pick. The first pick is owned by the Detroit Pistons, and still the consensus number one pick is Cade Cunningham, a really dominant player on the offensive side. He is a floor general, he's a tall point guard, and he has amazing defensive potential. As you might have seen in our Cade Cunningham video, he will fit perfectly into the Detroit Pistons system, and there won't be too much pressure on him to succeed immediately, but we think that he'll be a multi-time All-Star, the possible MVP candidate.
At second, we have Jalen Green of the G League Ignite, a guard going to the Houston Rockets. Jalen Green is arguably one of the best scorers in this draft, and he may even have more potential than Cade Cunningham. And the reason why we don't have Evan Mobley here is because the Rockets don't really need a center because they already have Christian Wood. So we think a guard would be a better fit for them.
Next up at number 3, we have the Cavs, and we have them going with Evan Mobley instead. There's even an argument for him to be taken at second, obviously. So we think he makes a lot of sense here. The Cavs, although they do have a plethora of centers, I could actually see Evan Mobley playing the 4 for them in his first year, just because he is currently a little bit undersized. So he wouldn't be put in as much pressure if he was playing the 4, at least as he continues to grow. So he definitely makes sense for the Cavs.
With the fourth pick, the Toronto Raptors will be selecting point guard Jalen Suggs from Gonzaga. He is pretty much the consensus at this position. He's a very versatile player. He isn't the most athletically gifted, but he performed when it counted most in big moments, including a clutch semifinal game winner from half court in the NCAA tournament. And I think overall, Jalen Suggs has experience at the high school and college level, and his experience alongside players like Kyle Lowry, if he returns, and Fred VanVleet, along with the experienced organization headed by Masai Ujiri, the Toronto Raptors, I think he will grow really well in that environment, and he fits that mold of players.
At fifth, we have Jonathan Kuminga, a forward from the G League Ignite, a teammate of Jalen Green going to the Orlando Magic. We think he would be a great player for the Orlando Magic because he's an excellent rebounder, he's a great defender, and he's also a really solid paint scorer who's averaging 15 points per game against really tough G League competition. But the one downside is that he's not a great shooter, but he's still young and the Orlando Magic are rebuilding. So we think this would be a very good environment where he can develop these skills.
Next up at number 6, we have the Thunder. They have kind of a similar pick, I guess, in Scotty Barnes. He's a very good defender, but just like Kuminga, he's not the greatest shooter yet. But the Thunder are a developing team, and they can. That's definitely something that he can continue to work on as he progresses. And also, he kind of can, as a good defender, he can form a good duo with Lou Dort, who's also a famously good defender and very young as well. So they could be a great duo for years to come.
With the 7th pick, the Golden State Warriors will select Davion Mitchell from Baylor. The Warriors really have a strong starting 5, and if they're trading this pick, then no one knows who could have this pick and what player they would select. There's a lot of variability, but if the Warriors do keep this pick, they should get some defense at the guard position to back up a player like Steph Curry. And you won't be relying on Klay Thompson too much for his defense. There'll probably be a bit of missing after several knee injuries and heel injuries. I think that his agility might be a bit less. So having a good defensive player who knows how to win, who won't take too long to develop in a player like Davion Mitchell will be very key to the Warriors offense. Also, Davion Mitchell is a decent 3-point shooter. So I think his experience in winning culture and his ability to fit into a team like the Warriors, a winning culture, will prove him to be the right pick at 7.
At 8, we have the Magic going with James Bouknight, the guard from UConn. This is a really good pick for the Magic because he's a really solid ball handler, he's a great scorer, and he's also a great off-ball defender. So when you get a really good package like this with really great offense and really great defense, it's really hard to pass up on that. And we think that this would be a great fit for the Magic, who are also rebuilding, because he still needs some time to develop some of his on-ball defending skills as well as some of his shooting. So this would be a good environment for him.
Next, we have the Kings at 9, and we have them going with a small forward from Michigan, Franz Wagner. Now, they already have decent point guard depth, obviously, with, or just guard depth in general with De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield. And then they also have decent big men like Rashawn Holmes and Marvin Bagley. So it makes a lot of sense for them to go with a wing here. And Franz Wagner is, in our opinion, the best on the board still. He's an excellent defender, an excellent passer. He also needs to work on his shooting like multiple players in this draft, but that just comes with experience.
With the 10th pick, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. They're a team who should be a lot better than they are. They have a well-defined 3 and 4. They do need a center, but they do have a developmental player like Jackson Hayes, and we think that the players who are available at this spot are a bit much of a reach. So although their backcourt is a bit cluttered, the impending free agency of Lonzo Ball and the potential loss of him ensures that they would want a sufficient backup. And there's none better at this point than to take the man who can jump out the gym like Michael Jordan, Keon Johnson. He has a 48-inch vertical. He's a very raw prospect. However, he can develop really well. He played on Tennessee, one of the best teams in the NCAA. He has a lot of athleticism. He can be really good on both sides of the ball. And if he can improve his decision making and shooting a little bit, he can become a very serviceable point guard in the league as a whole.
At 11, we have the Charlotte Hornets picking Jalen Johnson. He's a really elite playmaker, and also he's a forward from Duke. He also has really elite athleticism, and he's a really solid defender as well. We think he would be a great fit alongside LaMelo Ball just because he's so athletic. He can probably go for some alley-oops. He's also another playmaking threat that would really complement them well. And he does have a few red flags, such as his like not so elite shooting. But we think Hornets are also rebuilding. And I don't know that he would be a year 1 starter, so it would be a good place for him to develop.
At number 12, we have the San Antonio Spurs, and we have them going with Moses Moody, a shooting guard from Arkansas. And he's actually one of the better shooters in this draft, pretty efficient. And he also has some great like defensive ability. So he makes a lot of sense for the Spurs team. He could, in the long term, be a DeMar DeRozan replacement if they can't keep him around. But even if they do keep him, they can definitely play together at the 2 and the 3, so it wouldn't cause any conflict there.
With the next pick, you have the Pacers, who were a team who was riddled with injuries and unfortunate circumstances the past year, and they ended up losing in the play-in tournament. The Pacers are a really good team, and they have players coming back from injuries such as TJ Warren, but with a strong core already of Karis LeVert, Malcolm Brogdon, Domantas Sabonis, TJ Warren, and Miles Turner, there's not a whole lot which they can improve. I think one of the areas they were lacking, because of the clutter at the power forward and center position, because there's not too much spacing, they could use a lot more shooting. And I think if they could become a much more volume shooting team, that would give Domantas Sabonis more space to create and to score on the inside, and Miles Turner more room to finish. So having a shooter outside instead of Doug McDermott, who is solid, having a guy like Corey Kispert from Gonzaga, one of the best shooters and the best team in the second best team in college basketball this year. An experienced player, he can easily fit in, and he will seamlessly fit into the NBA's modern 3-point shooting barrage. I think that it'll be a great pick for the Pacers here.
At 14, we have the final pick of the lottery and also the Warriors' second pick. We have them going with Usman Garuba, a forward from Real Madrid. So one of the first international players off the board. He's a really good small ball defender, and he has some shades of Draymond Green. And their playstyles are actually very similar because he's a solid rebounder, he's a great hustle and great attitude, and he's also like a small ball type center. So we don't think he'll be a year 1 starter, but when Draymond starts to age and he starts to not play as well as he used to, we think that he could be a very solid replacement, so the Warriors don't have to entirely switch their system.
Next up at 15, we have the Washington Wizards taking Trey Murphy, a shooting guard out of Virginia, who can also play the small forward. And that's why we think he makes a lot of sense for the Wizards, because they already have that backcourt duo, which is very ball dominant already. And Trey Murphy is more of kind of a catch and shoot guy who doesn't need the ball to be successful. So he makes a lot of sense playing the small forward for them. and he also is a great defender as well, which will just add another. It's another bonus for the Wizards.
With the 16th pick, we have the Thunder, who with their second and third first round picks in this draft, they'll be taking Alperen Sengun, the Turkish League MVP. He averaged 19 points a game there, and he is a very efficient player. He is a unicorn, if you could say. There have been several international unicorns who have panned up, who have not panned out. This is more of a hit or miss pick. You don't know if he'll succeed. There have been a couple of NBA players who've come out of the league, but obviously the level of competition will be something to look forward to. I think that the Thunder can develop him if they have a good development staff, and he's more of a project player, but I think that's where the Thunder are headed right now.
At 17, we have the Memphis Grizzlies going with Chris Duarte, a guard from Oregon. He's one of the most polished players in this draft class, but I guess that does come at a price because he's quite old and he's turning 24 by the draft. He's an elite shooter and he shot 42% from the three, which is excellent. He's also a hustler and a very feisty defender, and he averaged 1.9 steals per game. So I think he would be a great addition to the Grizzlies, adding to their already tough core of young defenders, and also adding another 3-point threat alongside Ja Morant and Dillon Brooks.
Next up, at 18, we have the Thunder picking again for the third time in this first round. We already had them taking a center and a wing, so now we think they should take a guard, and that's Josh Giddey. He's definitely fallen down our board a little bit. Some have him as around a top 10 prospect, but he definitely is a perfect pick for the Thunder because they need more ball movement, and he is one of the best passers in this draft. And he's also very, very young, and this Thunder team is still rebuilding. So to get a project player who's just 18 years old makes a lot of sense for this young team.
At 19, we have one of the surprise teams the past year, the New York Knicks, who were the 4th seed, but did end up getting knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. I think that overall they need a competent point guard because Derrick Rose is not the long-term solution. They're a very young team, and I think D Rose works better as a 2-guard or a backup one. So they need a sort of combo guard, a smart, scrappy defending guard, just fit with the personality of the New York Knicks. So I have them taking Jared Butler out of Baylor. Jared Butler, he's a really competent guard. He's a winning culture. He averages 17 points a game on really good efficiency. He averaged 2 steals a game in college. He's a junior, so he's a bit older. He fits in with the timeline similarly of other players who've been drafted in the recent couple of years. And I think that him alongside Archie will make one of the most dominant backcourts for the future. A lot of potential between those two. And if they have good chemistry, I think that could definitely turn into a scary defensive duo.
At 20th, we have the Atlanta Hawks picking Zaire Williams, a forward from Stanford. He's an elite ball handler for his size. He's 6'8", and he can still handle the ball so fluidly. He's also a great defender and hustler, and he may lack some shooting skills, but I think that's where he would complement the Hawks very well, because on the Hawks, they have so many elite scorers, and they could help him learn how to score better. But at the same time, the Hawks are struggling a little bit defensively, and I think that's where he would definitely help the Hawks. So this would be a great fit for the Hawks.
Next up, we have the Knicks picking again, and we have them going with maybe a bit of a surprise here, and that's Jaden Springer. We already took a guard before, but Jaden Springer is more of a 2 and could maybe even play the 3 because of his size. He's a great defender, so he would make a lot of sense in Tom Thibodeau's system, and he also shot like 44% in college, and 3-point shooting is something that the Knicks really lacked, especially in the playoffs. So I think he could really help sort out some of the Knicks' needs.
With the 22nd pick, we have the Los Angeles Lakers picking a few places before they did last year. And I think the Lakers are a really good team. Their small forward, power forward is really good. And I think they need a bit more help in the in the backcourt. I think that Dennis Schroeder was okay; it was serviceable, and I think that KCP is okay, but shouldn't really be a starter, getting 35 to 40 minutes a game. So I think you should get a good combo guard, and I think this is one of my favorite players in the draft. Ayo Dosunmu will be going here. Ayo Dosunmu is a 3-year starter out of Illinois. He led them to the first to being a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament and led them to the Sweet 16. I think that Ayo Dosunmu is a really solid player all around. He's pretty much good at everything, but not great at any one thing. And I think that's okay if you're not the number 1 option, if you're number 2, number 3 option. And he will be a 3rd or 4th option on the Lakers, but he will be someone who can be relied on. He's good at efficiency. He has played in a really good system. He's played against the best competition. And I think that he will project really well going to the NBA.
At 23rd, we have the Houston Rockets getting their second pick, and we have them going with Sharif Cooper, a guard from Auburn. This may be a little bit repetitive because it's the second guard in this draft, but we think it would still work out really well because Sharif Cooper is primarily a ball handler who plays the one, and we think Green could maybe slide over to two, which is what he played in college, and then Kevin Porter Jr. could play the three. But even then, Sharif Cooper is just way too good of a talent to pass up on at 23. He's an elite scorer who averaged 20 points per game, and he also averaged 8.1 assists per game, which is one of the highest in the entirety of college basketball this season. And he's, like I said before, he's an excellent ball handler. So the one downside is his efficiency, and he's only shooting 39% from the field and 22% from the three. But his free throw percentage is quite good at 82.5. We think that may suggest that he can definitely improve. So we think the Rockets are still developing. So at the same time, Sharif Cooper can probably develop his shooting skills.
Next up at the 24th pick, we have the Rockets picking again back to back. And we had them taking two guards already in this draft. So now we're going to go with a center / power forward, Kai Jones. Now we think he's a very, very strong prospect, one of the better defenders in the draft. And he would be a good complement aside Christian Wood because Wood is kind of more of an offensive player, while Kai Jones is slightly stronger defensively. And they're both kind of versatile enough to play either the 4 or the 5. So as a duo, they would pair perfectly together.
With the 25th pick, we have the Los Angeles Clippers, who were well on their way towards a finals run, possible finals victory before an unfortunate Kawhi injury. Now, with his ACL injury, which he'll be recovering for well into the season, they might need a bit of forward depth, but I trust Terrence Mann enough that I'm not going to give them a pick here. I'm going to give them a pick at the center spot because their center spot is very, very weak. They had Nicholas Batum guarding Rudy Gobert, guarding the great bigs that they were facing, and that's just not going to work when they face Nikola Jokic eventually or Anthony Davis. They need a big who can get rebounds, who can block shots, who is a very strong player overall. And I think that the best player just sitting right there is Charles Bassey from Western Kentucky. This past season, he had over 3 blocks a game. He's a good offensive player also with like 18 points, and he averages double-digit rebounds. I think this will translate, even though he played against not the best competitions. If you look at his game tape, he has the footsteps, he has the instincts of a great rebounding center. I can see a lot of Andre Drummond in him, young Andre Drummond, and I think that sort of energy that high intensity player that Charles Bassey is, I think that'll translate really well for the Clippers and for the league overall.
At 26th, we have the Denver Nuggets picking Isaiah Jackson, a forward / center from Kentucky. We think Isaiah Jackson's a really solid player because he is really elite athleticism. He can also protect the paint very well. He's a very good rim protector. We think he would work very well alongside Jokic just because he has more of the defensive capabilities, while Jokic is more of an offensive playmaker and scorer. And also Jokic can make lobs to Isaiah Jackson if necessary. So the Nuggets don't really have like very, very solid defense right now. And Isaiah Jackson would definitely help fill that gap in their team.
Next up, we have the Nets picking at 27. And they have obviously one of the best backcourts in the league, as well as Kevin Durant. So they really should be going for a big man here. And that's who, and the player we have them taking is just a traditional big man, Day'Ron Sharpe. He's just a traditional kind of interior scorer and great rim protector. Isn't like a crazy like stretch 5 or anything. He's not going to give you like 30 points per game as a center, but he's a good defender. And he actually had like 9 rebounds per game in college, which is like not that impressive, but he only played around 18 minutes a game. So if you look at the per 36 numbers, he's just a really dominant rebounder and defender.
With the next pick, we have the Sixers, and they had an unfortunate end in the second round to the Atlanta Hawks, who are heavy underdogs against them. And they will be looking to trade Ben Simmons. Depending on the return package, what they do with this pick might be several different things. But assuming that they give away Ben Simmons and do not get a point guard in return, they should get a point guard here. And I think the best point guard prospect remaining is Miles McBride. Miles McBride was really good. He broke out this year on West Virginia. He led them to a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, a really good overall record, and in conference. He averages around 16 points a game on pretty good efficiency, really good from the line and from three, which will translate really well to the NBA as he takes a few feet back in order to shoot threes. He's a decent passer. He gets around 5 assists a game and is a good defender. He's a really underrated defender. He gets around 2 steals a game, which is quite good for compared to a lot of the other point guard prospects around this range. He's a winner, and he can bring that sort of culture to Philly and grow along guards such as Matisse Thybulle and Tyrese Maxey.
At 29th, we have the Phoenix Suns picking JT Thor, a forward from Auburn. JT Thor is an excellent defender. He averaged 1.4 blocks and 0.8 steals in only 23 minutes. So he's a really great all-around defender. He has elite athleticism. But I guess the main downside is his offense. He only averaged 9 points per game on mediocre efficiency with 44% shooting from the field and 29% shooting from the three. So he definitely needs to improve those, but we think he would still be a great fit for the Suns because the Suns are in need of a power forward, because honestly, every position on their lineup except the power forward position is really solid. And we don't think Jay Crowder is a long-term solution, even though he's definitely a solid role player. So I think that having JT Thor develop maybe as a bench player behind Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson, and some other power forwards on the Suns would be very solid for them.
With the final pick in this first round NBA mock draft, we have the Utah Jazz taking a power forward, Jeremiah Robinson Earl from Villanova. They already have great guard depth with Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, and Jordan Clarkson, and they have one of the most dominant big men in the league in Rudy Gobert. So taking a forward here makes a lot of sense. Now, Jeremiah Robinson Earl isn't the most dominant player ever, but he's a good role player, and that's all the Jazz are going to need him to be. He's a good defender, not an amazing shooter, but he can continue to work on that. And he's also unselfish, so he can make sure that the ball is mostly in the hands of their stars like Donovan Mitchell. But that wraps it up for this first round NBA mock draft. We hope you enjoyed. If you liked it, remember to like. If you didn't, let us know why in the comments below. This is the Benchwarmers signing out. See ya.